Hi, I'm Karen Lose, 2001 Chair of Missoula Advocates for Human Rights, your local chapter of the Montana Human Rights Network. The following program will be, at various times, a potpourri of panels, call-in shows, pre-taped and live interviews, and short videos. Some shows will specifically respond to films produced by the racist and anti-Semitic organization known as the World Church of the Creator. Other shows will address other human rights and justice issues. Viewers are encouraged to contact us if you have questions or wish to participate in our activities. Our address is Missoula Advocates for Human Rights, P.O. Box 1254, Missoula, Montana 59806. Please stay tuned.
Hello, my name is Ralph Stone, and this is another program of the Missoula Advocates for Human Rights. We're doing a series of programs partly in response to the World Church of the Creator and partly an initiation on our own into the issues of human rights. Tonight we're privileged to have Janet Robideau with us. She's the project director and the lead organizer for Indian People's Action here in Missoula. She works throughout the state, however, and it's a group, IPA, which has been in existence for about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've known Janet for about that length of time, and I can testify that she is one of the moving forces in the state of Montana, very well recognized throughout the state, and indeed beginning to be recognized throughout the country. She's made appearances in Washington, D.C., where she's testified, and as we'll discuss later, she's going to South Africa this summer. Sometimes we hear about organizations like IPA, and we see the institutional face of those organizations, but we don't really get behind the face and learn about the people. And tonight we're going to be talking to Janet both about her personal experiences and as an organizer for IPA. So I'd like to have you tell the audience, Janet, a little bit about your past. I know you're a Northern Cheyenne,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can describe your early years a bit for us, that would be real helpful.
Okay. Well, we moved to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation when I was 10, and I remained there attending Busby Boarding School, which was a government boarding school, and then went to high school at St. Lebray Mission, which was a Catholic boarding school. And I stayed there until I graduated from high school, and then moved away from the reservation. Although I maintain very close ties to my homeland because my family is there. I go back several times throughout the year just to rejuvenate myself and be with my family and friends and people that I grew up with, because even though I don't live there, it's still a very important part of my life and my soul.
How large is the Northern Cheyenne tribe?
It's a very small tribe. We have, I believe there's probably around 8,000 total. We're not a large tribe, but we also include the Southern Cheyenne, which are in Oklahoma. We were all one tribe at one time, and then back during the Indian Territory times when we were all sent to Oklahoma, a band of the Cheyenne, the Northern Cheyenne, decided to come back to Montana, or the area that they wanted to come back to the Sacred Hills of South Dakota, and walked back. And then the half of the band stayed in Oklahoma because many were sick and just could not make the trek. So that's how we split up. But in Lame Deer, or the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, there's around, I think there's like 8,000 people.
Is Lame Deer the head or the agency?
Yes, Lame Deer is where the government agency, the Bureau of Indian Affairs agency is, but it's comprised of, I think it's 5, I have to say them all. There's Lame Deer, Ashland, Bernie, Busby, and Muddy Creek. And so those are the 5 villages, if you will, that make up the Northern Cheyenne Reservation.
Now, approximately how many of the Northern Cheyenne are on the reservation and how many off? Or were you talking about, you weren't talking about 10,000 living there on the reservation?
No, no. The numbers say that there's about half of us that live on the reservation and half of us that have moved away from the reservation. And the Montana numbers of all of the reservation of the roughly 30,000 Indian people that live in the state of Montana, approximately half, 47–48% live in Montana cities.
Okay, so it's about half and half.
Yeah, it's about half and half.
Now, you mentioned going to the two different schools. Did you learn much about your heritage in those schools? Or was that something that occurred later or through your family?
I learned our history, tradition, and culture from my family, from my grandparents, Alec and Mary Blackhorse. And I learned all of our history from our family. It wasn't taught in the schools. What we learned was just basic textbook information that didn't go into any type of detail. And it wasn't until I went to college that I really learned what we as Native Americans had gone through from the beginning to the present. And I was shocked. And none of that, and still not a lot of it is in the textbooks.
And where was college?
Well, I started at what was Eastern Montana College, and then I went to work. I was tired of school, and then I went back to school in my late 30s, and then graduated. I went to Miles Community College, and with the intention of just getting an associate's degree, and then I had a teacher who said, "You need to go on. You are a talented individual. You have a lot of potential. You can't just settle for an associate's degree because you need to go on because you're going to do great things." And she's still around. I'm still in touch with her. She's, in fact, in Kalispell. She was my psych teacher. And so she encouraged me to go on, and I continued and finished my education here at the University of Montana.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
About a teacher having
a
great influence. What's your earliest memory of experiencing discrimination as a member of a Native American tribe?
My very first memory was the first time that we, living in Busby, Montana, we went to town, which was Hardin, Montana. And we didn't have like big grocery stores on the reservation. There was a small gas station / little mom and pop store, but the groceries were very expensive. And so we would travel to like Hardin or Forsyth or Miles City, towns that surrounded our reservation. And my very first encounter was walking, wanting to go to a store in Hardin. And there were signs on the windows that said no dogs and no Indians allowed. And then the second time, the very first trip, I saw these signs, and I had never seen that before. And then the second time was on that same trip, and I was walking down the street, myself and one of my cousins, and we were going to go to this cafe called the Pastime Cafe, which was in the bad part of town in Hardin. I mean, Hardin was 3 blocks long, so. And this woman and her 2 children, and the young man, I don't know if that was their son, but I remember we were walking down the street, my cousin and I, and we're like 10 years old, and this woman said, "Get off the street, you dirty little savages." And we didn't say anything. I was shocked, and I remember going home and and talking with my mother, and I asked my grandfather, and I asked him throughout when things like this would happen, I said, why do people do that? And my grandfather said they don't know any better.
How old were you?
10.
10.
And that was right here in the state of Montana, Hardin, Montana.
And Hardin still has something of a reputation for problems involving Indians.
Right, because they're right on or very near the Crow Reservation. And that's a reputation that the city of Hardin has had for a very long time. And I try to stay out of there. I haven't, I'll stop there if and only if I have to get gas, but I try not to. Try not to
give them any more business.
Yeah.
When you went to community college and then to the University of Montana, I assume that the level of understanding of Native American issues was somewhat better, but in terms of the experiences you had with the public, were these communities more tolerant, less prejudiced, or did you continue to see evidence of racism?
I continued to see evidence of racism. I worked initially for the for the Montana Highway Department. Now it's the Department of Transportation, but it was the Montana State Highway Department, and then they had a big reorganization, and so my job was cut. And they offered me the same job, same pay, same everything in Glendive, but I didn't want to move to Glendive. We were settled in Miles City. And Miles City, you know, it's still that way today, although it's been a while since I've been there, but I still have friends that live there. Miles City was a place that tolerated us as Indian people, and there were several Hispanics that lived in Miles City, and there still are, and we were tolerated as long as we didn't try to like join their country club, or we didn't go into the upper crust restaurants in Miles City, or the nice bars. You know, we could go to like the Range Riders and a place where the cowboys hung out. But it was pretty difficult, and my daughter was in 3rd grade at the time, and she was in the public school system in Miles City, and endured a lot of harassment and name calling. And I remember going to the school almost every day and talking with the teacher and saying, you have to do something about this, because my daughter was coming home, literally she would have to come home different ways each day, because these little kids would say horrific things to her, call her names, and she would come to me and say, why do they do that? And I honestly wasn't satisfied with they don't know any better, because they do know better. And so finally I took her out of that public school and I put her in the local Catholic school. It was Holy Rosary, or Sacred Heart, excuse me, Sacred Heart. Holy Rosary is a hospital. But and I swore after my my own experiences with the Catholic boarding school that, no more Catholic schools for anyone close to me. But at least at the Catholic school, when the first time one of these little kids called her a name, and she came home and told me, and I told her, you need to tell the teacher. And I said, and then I was waiting to see what they would do. And to their credit, they stopped it immediately. And so, but then when we moved here, and you would think, and this was in '84 when we moved here, you would think that things would be better, but they weren't, and they still aren't.
How old was your daughter when you moved?
Well, she was in 5th grade or 6th grade, so she was like 11 or 12 at the time. Can't remember. We've been here forever.
And what school she attend?
She went to Roosevelt, and then she went to Hellgate High School. And at both schools, and you know, a lot of this stuff I didn't even know about until she told me as we were doing our work with IPA. And I was just, if I could go back and talk to those people, I would go back. Many of them are still around, still teaching in the system. But
your daughter just didn't tell you everything then at the time.
yes, she didn't, because, you know, kids are like, they don't want to be seen as a tattletale. And to be honest, she was somewhat pensive about what I would do, because I tend to be very protective. But I have zero tolerance for intolerance. And unfortunately, you know, that it hasn't been a big change.
So what she experienced at Roosevelt and Hellgate was not too unlike what she was experiencing elsewhere in Miles City, or
Right.
what you experienced in Hardin.
It was a lot of the same, and
teachers were insensitive, or they weren't prepared to intervene, or they ignorant. What do you think?
I think a little bit of all three. I think, you know, she had many teachers. In some instances, I think that you know, one or two of them may have been of the mindset, oh, just kids. You know, these are just kids playing. And that was when she was in the younger grades. And in high school, I do know that there were also a couple of teachers who were very supportive of her and made her high school years, you know, tolerable for her. But a lot of it, I think, is just ignorance, in the sense that some of the teachers knew what was going on and chose to look the other way, which I think is worse, because you might as well just participate in it if you're just going to look the other way. And I think that a lot of it is students, or with her, she said, what was the point? And a lot of times we as Indian people will tell our kids, just get through it. Mm-hmm. You're going to get out of there, just get through it.
Don't make waves.
It's not even like don't make waves, it's more like just endure it, and then it'll be done. Unfortunately, it gets so bad that kids go, look, I can't take it anymore, and they'll just drop out.
And we know that the dropout rate for Indian children is exceedingly high. I don't know what the rate is, but I know from having listened to you talk at IPA meetings that it's far, far higher than the average white student.
The number of Indian students who start the year as freshmen and who actually graduate as seniors is half.
Oh.
So the dropout rate is exactly 50%. And that's, you know, completely unacceptable.
Completely unacceptable, and it's something that can be corrected, and of course
yes,
should be corrected. This is sort of a segue into what IPA is all about too, and we can come back to racism as something that is bigger than just what we're talking about here, and I want your ideas about that. But I know IPA has been working with the school district for several years, trying to get the problems rectified, including the high dropout rate. What are some of the other problems that IPA has addressed in the school system, and some of the successes that you mentioned? Textbooks, the literature that's presented in the classrooms back when you were in school, and I know that's been an ongoing issue, and the number of Indian teachers, extraordinarily small compared to the total number of students who are Indians.
Yeah, the total number of Indian students in the public education system right now sits at around 10%. And we have 10,700 teachers in the state of Montana, 1% of which are Native American, which is an unacceptable number. And we're concerned because we have students in the classroom. You have a large percentage of Native American students. We have a lot of Hmong students. We have a lot of Hispanic students. Not in Missoula, but in the state, in the larger cities, in Great Falls and Billings and Missoula, Kalispell, Butte, Helena, Bozeman. Bozeman doesn't have a large student of color population, but when kids of color don't see people who look like they do in front of the classroom, they don't know that they can aspire to that. And an example of that is the Indian Education Department of the Department of Education from the Superintendent of Public Instruction in Helena. Denise Juneau and Mike Jetty did a tour of Montana schools, both on the reservation and in the cities. And at one of the schools, a little Indian girl came up, was talking with Denise, and Denise told her, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And the little girl said, "I want to be a teacher's aide." And Denise said, "Why don't you want to be a teacher?" And the little girl said, "Because Indians don't get to be teachers. They have to be aides." And that just struck home with me. It's a tragic, tragic statement because she's growing up with that. And so we've explained to the school district, we don't want you to hire Native American teachers or teachers of color just to color up your staff. We want qualified and experienced teachers because those are our children in the system.
Certainly.
But we also know that there have been a number of I've tracked it, there have been a number of Native American teachers who have applied in the Missoula School District, and for whatever reason, they have been pushed into title programs, Title VII, Title IX, or they are substitutes. And granted, the turnover is not very high. We have a lot of tenured teachers, and so there isn't a high turnover. But the school district, based on the I love to say this, Montana Code Annotated 20-1-501, which is the Indian Education for All law, states that the part of it says that school districts will develop partnerships with the Montana University system to try to develop a program to transition in recently graduated teachers into the public school system, especially in the larger cities. But
So
until that time, we have to push them.
I think the tragedy, in addition to the fact that Native American children don't have role models, or they aspire to positions lower than they should, the absence of Native American educators in the system means that non-Native American students are not exposed either. So
Exactly.
the whole school system is deprived of what it could benefit from if they had the mix.
Exactly, and that's our point as well, because a lot of times school decision makers want to take what we're saying and say, well, this is this group of people asking for special treatment for this group, and we're saying that's not true. We're speaking for Indian people, yes, because we want to see more Native American teachers, but we want to see more African American. We want to see more Asian American, more Hispanic American, more that so that our kids have access to what people from other cultures.
So that when those kids graduate, they don't repeat the mistakes that their parents and grandparents made,
Right.
that they don't perpetuate the prejudice that
Exactly.
they start to learn and schools should be about that. In addition to the educational system, I'm wondering if you personally experienced housing discrimination, which I know is another area that Montana People's Action and Indian People's Action is interested in. I don't think there's been as much organizing in that area just because the schools are such a critical area right now. But
there definitely is housing discrimination against Indian people in Missoula, and it's not just, you know, housing. I've gotten information at my office that there are several motels here right in Missoula that refuse to allow Indian people to stay. And I have the names of them if anybody wants to know what they are. We had a recent experience where a student came to our office. He was graduating from college, brought his family down from Browning, had reserved a room at a local motel with a credit card, you know, over the phone, reserved 2 rooms. You know, his mother, his aunties, you know, family are coming down. Gets to the day before graduation, goes to the motel to confirm everything up, and ends up getting kicked out. And so, you know, we wanted to go picket the place, and we could have, but the individual in question, you know, it was up to him. But people should know that type of stuff, and it's not just this one motel. There are other motels in this town that when we had the Kiayo powwow, or, you know, we have a tournament going on, that they refuse service to Indian people. They don't want them in the motel rooms. And not to say that, you know, I understand in some instances that there's been extreme damage done. We have to take responsibility for that. If I'm the one that's gone into a motel room and caused damage, then I should pay for it. But I didn't, you know. So what if I want to bring my family up here? You know, they don't. So I send them to one of these motels that are on this list, and they're going to look at me, and they're going to see that I'm Native American, and they're going to make a judgment, and they're going to refuse me a room because they think that I'm going to tear the place up, which, you know, I think that's.
What's the action to be taken in that instance, in those instances, Janet?
Well, we recognize that people have the right to refuse service to anyone. We recognize that. It's a business. However, this is again following along a stereotype where you're going to make an entire group of people pay the consequences for a smaller group. And you know, we should talk and say, okay, I'm fine. If they don't want service to Indian people, then they should put big signs in their windows that say no Indians allowed. That way, then we know to stay out of there. And that may be a little extreme, but you know, the thing is that this town touts itself as a very progressive and open-armed, and you know, we're very diverse, but we also, and we are, but we also need to recognize that we have these pockets here, and not just overlook it and say, well, but we're very progressive, and we're open-armed, and we love everybody.
Right.
You know, we need to do things about that, and that's what our group does. Is we get in a room together and say, okay, what should we do?
Right. We may be a liberal oasis, but that doesn't mean that we haven't worlds to go. Just on every level of discrimination. Another area that frequently comes up is law enforcement, and the lack in the police department in the city and in the county of Native American officers, comparable, I think, to what exists in the schools. And I know that IPA has been directly involved in trying to promote diversity and sensitivity to Native American issues, and has recently indeed has been successful at that, and has demonstrated its support for the police department in the arguments over arbitration and the settlement with the city, which I think is really interesting. And maybe if you could talk a little bit about IPA's relationship with law enforcement in the city of Missoula, or in the county too, and how that's gone over the past few years, because that's a real sticking point often on issues of race.
Well, initially it started, and I'd heard these complaints ever since I moved here in 1984, and I started going to the Missoula Indian Center. One of the very first complaints I heard was about law enforcement. And so about 3 years ago, we started a campaign to try to address it. And at our very first meeting with then Chief of Police Lawrenson, he came to meet with us, and we discussed what our concerns were, and then he suggested a larger meeting where it was a public meeting where all of our folks came out and voiced their complaints to his management team. It was all of his lieutenants and sergeants and captains and all those military titles. And it was interesting because we had 3 demands. One was a progressive complaint system, one was diversity training for the cops, and a third was 5 Native American police officers by 1999, or 2000, one of them, by 2000. So first we realized that the progressive, after working with them, we realized that they have a solid complaint system, that there's really no way that a complaint can be overlooked. And we trust them to follow through with that process. Now, it took us a long while to get to that level of trust. But that was based on coming together and talking things out. And then the diversity training, which we call dismantling racism training, and was actually, we've done, I believe it's a total of 8 now for law enforcement, because we did the city police and the sheriff's department. The police did the diversity training, and then we pulled back on the 5 Native American police officers because we did not understand the long process it takes to even get on. First you have this, you know, they put out the call, or you apply, and you have to get through that first cut. And then, you know, you get through another cut. And if you make that, then you have to go through this I believe then you go to the academy for 12 weeks. And then you're on probation for 9 months. And so, you know, to bring 5 off, they don't hire 5 officers at a time. So we said, okay, how about 1? You know, 1 this year. And,
Put in the pipeline.
Right. And so that actually did happen. There is a Native American police officer now. But the thing was the diversity training that allowed...
How did that go?
You know, to be honest, it was difficult, extremely difficult, because the officers were mandated there. They didn't want to be there. They did not want to be there. And so walking into a room as trainers with people who were already angry with us to begin with, it's hard to win over a room like that. And I think there's probably only been like 4 or 5 out of all of the city police officers. Only 4 or 5 came up to us after the training and said this whole thing was worthless. Well, not worthless, but you know, I didn't learn anything, and I'm not going to change anything that I do. And so, I mean, 5 out of 100 is pretty good.
Pretty good odds.
Yeah.
And Chief Lawrenson, of course, is no longer chief. He retired a few months ago, and I know he was something of a supporter of human rights in the city of Missoula. Now we have a new chief, Chief Weaver, and I don't know if you've worked with him or not, but tell us a little bit about what you've been involved with in the picketing, and which may look strange, Indian people's action out there on the picket line with the police.
Well, you know, we wouldn't have been doing that 3 years ago. We had a meeting with Chief Weaver shortly after he took office, just to see what his plans were. You know, we wanted to maintain the relationship. We wanted to see if the relationship could be, you know, if it could go on, if what, and he seems like right on. You know, he is going to carry on in the tradition regarding human rights. He's going to carry on in the tradition of former Chief Lawrenson, and so we you know, we believe that it's going to be okay for now. With the binding interest arbitration, that we, as you know, Montana People's Action is also part of the Montana Community Labor Alliance, and which is a statewide organization of community organizations and labor groups. And so the organizer, Mark Anderlich, was working with, he had approached the police union, the Missoula Police Association, and they began discussion. And the head of the officer who leads the association, Tim Burt, met with Mark, and you know, other officers met with Mark, and so Mark basically laid out an organizing plan, helped them lay out an organizing plan, one of which was an informational picket. And so being part of MCLA, you know, they do the I'll Be There, they called our organization to come in and participate. And so I called our IPA folks and said, so we've been asked to picket with these cops, what do you think? and a couple's, you know, said, what? And, you know, jokingly, but we did. We went, Montana People's Action and Indian People's Action picketed with the police officers, because it really is about human rights, and their rights were being violated. They were working without a contract for a long time. They were trying to, they had given up a lot, and they were asking for this particular item, which was the binding interest arbitration, which would, we thought, would enhance their you know, their ability to perform in the community. And it was really a learning experience for us, for both sides, because I think they were able to see us in a different light, and we were able to see them in a different light. And it was a lot of fun teaching them how to chant, because the very first informational picket, you know, we were walking around in dead silence, and I was like, we need to yell, we need to do something. And they just really got into it. And I just, you know, it's sort of like cops are people too. They're a member of our community.
Sort of like class was trumping
Yes.
other issues here, that these were working people, and Indians are working people for the
Right.
most part, and there was a common interest there.
Yeah.
And that's good to see, and it's as you say, it's good for both sides.
It is. And we had a good time. We had a good time with them.
Well, picketing can be, you know, it can be fun,
Right.
as well as, I mean, it can be therapeutic as well as
Yeah.
useful. Janet, what do you organize all over the state? I know you're always busy, and you're going to be going to South Africa this summer, but I wanted to ask you about how meaningful it is to be an organizer, to be working constantly in this area of combating racism and discrimination, and associating with the MPA, which is working for working people. What does it mean to you? What are the rewards and the gnashing of the teeth on the other side of it? What?
You know, the rewards are seeing our folks, having our folks have a voice, have a place at a table where we weren't invited before. And to see the change come about, however slow it is, it's just, I've always been an individual that when somebody tells me no and gives me no reason, no logical reason, then I've always questioned that. And when somebody tells me that no, because I don't deserve it, then I say, well, why? And I want to know why. So when people say no, we're not going to change this, or whatever it is our opposition says, then we need to find that way to work it out, because it's not us coming in and just mashing over people. We have what we believe are legitimate concerns. We want to work them out with the people that we're targeting. And sometimes it just gets into this standoff. But the rewards are things like the opportunity of one of our IPA members to be the only person in the world speaking about urban Indian issues in the world, or to be invited to testify at a Senate hearing, or to be invited to the White House, or to be asked what our opinion is on such and such. Those are the rewards. But just having the voice of just knowing that we're not alone out there, that we're working together and we're working for change, and ultimately, our children and our children's children will benefit.
I was going through the archives of the online last night of the Missoula Independent, and I was struck by the number of articles in the Independent over the last 2 years on Montana Indian issues, and it's a lot of them had to do with IPA, and I'm sure a lot of the coverage of Native Americans in Missoula was prompted by the activities of IPA even earlier in those years when you were having speak outs and meeting with the schools and the so I was really pleasantly surprised at the coverage. It reminded me of the fact that you're getting more of a voice all the time. And another thing that has struck me about your own work with IPA is that you recognize that racism is not just individual, that it's institutional, that it's invisible often, and people often don't understand that racism isn't just some little kid being mean to another little kid, or an adult being mean. It's built in our institutions, and working as that's what your philosophy is, I think, that you have to combat racism on all of those levels.
Right.
And it seems to me that that's what IPA has been doing. From my experience with IPA, the group has really hung together well. You've had a good core of people that have stayed with it over the years. And what's the situation like elsewhere in the state?
We have a really good core of group. We have the Missoula district, we have the Billings district, and we have the Central Montana district. And the Billings district, we have very strong. The difference in the two groups, we're all IPA, but there's the Billings chapter and the Missoula chapter and the Central Montana chapter. The Central Montana chapter, which is Great Falls, Helena, Butte, and we have some in Harlem. But they're mostly tied into the bigger statewide campaigns, the schools issue, and now the Child Family Services campaign. Billings and Missoula they're tied into the larger statewide campaigns, but they're also working on their local campaigns. And the Billings group, which is odd, they're not odd, but it's odd that they're a little more militant than the Missoula group, which you think would be opposite. The Billings group is more apt to jump into jump into the fight for systemic change. And the big example of that is that we've been looking for our Indian people to run for school board here in Missoula. And for many reasons, it's difficult to find someone to commit to the time and energy it takes to sit on the Missoula School Board. In Billings, we have people who are just ready to do it. And so, you know, but they're different groups, and they're both very vital. And then the Central Montana group is they're tied into the bigger schools thing, because the schools issue is just statewide. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that you are going to Durban, South Africa this summer. Tell us about how that came about. And
well, the Applied Research Center out of California is putting together a delegation of people of color from the United States they are taking to the World Conference Against Racism in Durban, South Africa, which is August 27th to September 1st. And I was invited. I'm the only urban Indian that is on the list for the delegation. There are a number of other indigenous groups that are going to be there, but I'm the only urban Indian. And the Applied Research Center is also bringing friends of the delegation. So through that, we get to bring one of our other IPA leaders. We're bringing Francine White, who is our current chairperson, to Durban, South Africa. And this is we're going to be the only two urban Indians in the world addressing urban Indian issues. And there were two from Western Montana, and there is a third who is not from our delegation, but she's also a representative from Montana from the indigenous group, and it's Gail Small from Native Action from the Northern Cheyenne. So we're very excited. The Applied Research Center is paying for mine, but we're raising money to pay for Francine's portion of the trip, and it's about $3,500 that we need.
And if organizations would like to contribute to help defray Francine's expenses, you're interested in having those contributions go to IPA, and then in turn, I understand that you and Francine will be available to speak to organizations and groups in the community when you return. Mm-hmm. Share what you've learned.
Well, we want to. We're asking folks to give us a tax-deductible contribution made out to Indian Peoples Action, and note that it's for the South Africa trip. And we, in return, are more than willing to come to any group, you know, any group or organization to share our experiences. I'm going to be working on the education part. Francine will be working on the youth issues. And so we're more than willing to make a presentation. We're going to be writing a report as well. But we do, I'm asking folks to kick in, because we do need all the money we can get to help pay for that.
Well, I'm sure you will get some, and I'll just make a pitch for groups that have representatives watching the program tonight to open up their checkbooks, because I can't imagine a better use of the money for our own community and for the groups that are represented that might be in the audience. I know the Missoula Advocates is very interested, and when we have our next meeting, as I told you, I'm going to make a pitch that we offer a contribution. I'm really excited about it, and it'll be something that will be in the news nationally and internationally, and just that opportunity to have someone from our community go and then come back and share what they've learned is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
It is. We just wonder about What are these little Indians from Lame Deer doing, going to Durban, South Africa?
Whoever dreamed when I
Whoever
was
dreamed?
going to school at Busby, was that
Busby Boarding School.
boarding school?
Who would have dreamed that, you know, in 2001 I'd be going to South Africa? I've never been out of the country, so.
Well, I think it's a good place to close the interview from the reservation to South Africa and all that's gone in between and all that I know is to come. I'm really you know, delighted that you're in the community, Janet.
Thank you.
You know, I've invited you to speak at Martin Luther King events, and you've won awards from different groups in the community for your work, and I know that's going to continue. So thanks again.
Thank you.